Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do, and I'll bet it can be hard work. You know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowner's or renter's insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
Now, O'Connor and Company.
That's right. One last sip of coffee, and we're ready to go at 5:07. It's Larry O'Connor on O'Connor and Company getting you going this morning over the next 4 hours. We've got so much to cover for you, and we got some friends to help us along the way. Mark Krikorian at 6:35 from Center for Immigration Studies talk about Kamala Harris on the border and what she had to say. Oh, no, I'm sorry. She's not on the border. She's in Guatemala, and we'll let you know what she had to say in just a few moments. Also at 7:05, Bethany Mandel, homeschooling mother and advocate, editor at Ricochet, talks about this new move for moms to stay home, as we discussed yesterday. 8:05 brings us Christian Davenport of the Washington Post, talk about his boss, his owner, Jeff Bezos, going out to space. And then at 8:35, Josh Kroshauer of National Journal talk about today's big primary for Democrats in Virginia. Or is it big? Or is it a fait accompli? We'll see. Once again, I am Larry O'Connor. And once again, joining us, keeping us company all morning long, the Washington editor from Spectator, AA, Amber Athey. Good morning.
Good morning.
You're back.
Yes.
So it must not have been too bad.
No, I thought long and hard about it, and I decided to come back.
Well, we appreciate that. You know, Kamala Harris thought long and hard about what she was going to do with regard to the border crisis after President Biden threw it in her lap, and she finally has done something. She was sent down to Guatemala to get to the so-called root causes.
The United States will continue to enforce our laws and secure our border. The United States will continue to enforce our laws and secure our border.
Yes, we heard that the first time, but then she went on to go a little bit further than she or Joe Biden or the Democratic Party platform of 2020, or really anybody other than the Trump administration and most Republicans have gone for the last several years. She said this.
I want to be clear to folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border. Do not come. Do not come. The United States will continue to enforce our laws and secure our border. There are legal methods by which migration can and should occur. But we, as one of our priorities, will discourage illegal migration. And I believe if you come to our border, you will be turned back.
I believe? I'm
so
pretty
let's
sure.
Discourage our friends, our neighbors, our family members from embarking on what is otherwise an extremely dangerous journey.
All right, so do we think that the people of Guatemala are hearing that and they recognize that she's full of crap? She's just winking at this whole I believe they will be turned back? It's like, well, what do you mean you believe? Aren't you the vice president? Don't you know, and can't you properly articulate the policy? And she can't, because there is a paper trail as long as anyone's arm. I have pretty long arms. They're not bad. Where they've been saying quite the opposite. Here she is in 2018.
Let's not be fooled. The reality is that this administration brought it upon itself to create a zero-tolerance policy while vilifying a group of people who have traveled through countries seeking asylum, fleeing murder capitals of the world. And what do? Look at this place behind me. We imprison them. We imprison them. We put them behind barbed wires.
That was 2018. And, of course, that exact policy is in place right now to the Biden administration. And actually, those prisons are exploding, Amber. And, once again, yesterday, Kamala Harris.
Do not come. Do not come.
So what do we make of this administration's policies for real?
Well, this is pure desperation, her plea not to come, but obviously it doesn't match with the administration's policies because the policies have led to, according to the CPP, some of the highest immigration numbers in decades. They were able to apprehend almost 180,000 migrants this April, almost 170,000 in March. And these are levels unlike they've ever seen before. Meanwhile, the Biden administration has undone all of the policies that lead to border security that were in place under the Trump administration.
And we're working.
And we're working because they managed to bring down the numbers from the spring and summer of 2019, which were at some of their highest levels then. And they were able to lead to almost a 50% decrease. So this is the things like the Remain in Mexico policy, where if migrants would come and claim asylum, they would have to wait in Mexico for their claims to be adjudicated instead of catch and release, going into the United States, and then guess what? Never showing up for their court hearing.
Of course not. And by the way, Amber, the beauty of the Remain in Mexico policy was that it was in harmony with international law and international standards and norms, because if you're in Guatemala, you're in Honduras, you're in El Salvador, you truly do have a legitimate claim for asylum. You don't trek 1,900 miles across another country to then seek asylum at the country of your choosing. That's not how asylum works. You cross the border, you go to Mexico and say, help me, Mexico, I need asylum. Mexico has a robust asylum policy right there in keeping with international norms. So does Costa Rica. So does Panama. There are plenty of options. Clearly, this is not an asylum situation. This is, I want to go to America and get my ATM card and anything else that the government is going to give me.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, economic migration, guess what else the Trump administration did? They implemented a public charge rule so that illegal immigrants were not allowed to get access to government services or welfare or all of these other programs.
They had to prove that they came here that they weren't going to be, right?
Exactly. They had to have a sponsor who actually signed for them. And if they did take any benefits, they would have to pay those benefits back to the government. That was another policy that, once again, the Biden administration undid.
Meanwhile, let's remind everyone, Kamala Harris, once again, 2018, this statement.
Through countries seeking asylum, fleeing murder capitals of the world. And what do? Look at this place behind me. We imprison them.
Now, when she says, look at this place behind me, you know where she was. She was at a detention center at the border. Of course, you know, AOC famously goes down there with a photo crew I think she had a stylist with her because she did look impeccable.
She had great lipstick on that day.
Did you notice the red? Yeah, it's
nice.
Really nice stuff. That was also at the border. That was Kamala Harris at the border, AOC at the border, made sure the cameras were there, made sure that there was a crowd there for Kamala as she was speaking through a megaphone there. We are imprisoning them. We're putting them behind bars. Well, yesterday she was asked, why are you in Guatemala? You seem to have skipped a place here with regard to the border crisis. You flew right over the actual, what's the word for it? Como se dice? Oh, the border, the actual border. Why didn't you go to the border?
There have been questions about why you and President Biden have yet to visit the border, the U.S. southern border. And I'm wondering if you can answer some of those. Republicans have charged that you're not taking the situation there serious.
I love the reporter's deference.
Oh, she's so nervous.
And so deferred. I wonder if you wouldn't mind, if it wouldn't be too much trouble. I know you have a busy schedule.
Please do me the favor.
By the way, thank you for the cookies. Those were, we got to talk about the Kamala cookies in a moment. But it's just amazing, the different approach. But let's hear it. And that's a legitimate question. Why didn't you go to the border?
So how do you respond to that criticism, and when will that visit come?
The reason I am here in Guatemala as my first trip as Vice President of the United States is because this is one of our highest priorities, and I came here to be here on the ground to speak with the leader of this nation around what we can do in a way that is significant, is tangible, and has real results. And I will continue to be focused on that kind of work as opposed to grand gestures.
Grand gestures. And in 2018?
Seeking asylum, fleeing murder capitals of the world. And what do? Look at this place behind me. We imprison them.
Back then it was fine to go to the border for a grand gesture. All right, a little bit more on Kamala and Guatemala, what this policy really is, if anyone can make heads or tails of it, and a reaction from the aforementioned Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That's next. But first, it's 5:15. WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the fives, Lisa Baden is in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
The Dan Bongino Show, weekdays from noon to 3 on 105.9 FM, WMAL.
By the way, right before Kamala Harris landed in Guatemala, Amber Athey. The president of Guatemala, the day before, had something to say about the Biden administration's participation in the crisis.
Yamate says increased border crossings have been caused in part by the change of administrations in Washington.
The message changed to, we're going to reunite families and we're going to reunite children. The very next day, the Coyotes were here organizing groups of children to take them to the United States.
Yeah, it's pretty unequivocal there, and it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they already had agreements in place prior to the Biden administration going into office, and these were the safe third country agreements. So it wasn't just remain in Mexico. These migrants who were claiming asylum, whatever country they stopped in on their way first was where they had to claim asylum under all of these agreements. Those were stripped away. So I'm sure this guy is livid. And Guatemalan officials in general are livid because they had already done this song and dance with the previous administration. Mm-hmm. Now they're having to go back and redo the work that's already been done, renegotiate. I would be saying this publicly as well.
Yeah, I'm surprised the president of Guatemala there did not also point out the investment made by the Biden campaign in the "Please Let Us In" Biden T-shirts that were handed out to all of the alleged refugees trying to cross the border, who, by the way, have been let in. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who, yes, had impeccable styling when she went down for that photo shoot at the parking lot of a detention center on the border. She responded on social media as usual. She tweeted at a video of Vice President Kamala Harris saying, don't come, we'll send you back if you do. She said, this is disappointing to see. Disappointing to see. So it's not a war crime. It's not
it's not a Nazi signal.
This isn't she's not going down there and weeping in front of the death camp set up by this administration. It's disappointing to see. She also says seeking asylum at any U.S. border is a 100% legal method of arrival. Well, yes and no, Congresswoman. Applying for a false claim of asylum is not 100% legal, and it's not a legal method of arrival per se, especially if you're coming from literally the other side of the world in some cases. At that point, the legal method of seeking asylum right now for people from Guatemala is to go either to a neighboring country or to go to an embassy. Her second point, though, is the U.S. spent decades contributing to regime change and destabilization in Latin America. We can't help set someone's house on fire and then blame them for fleeing. So it's America's fault.
Oh, yeah.
That people are coming
We've
here.
also spent decades sending them billions of dollars in aid, which now we're apparently going to increase even further to combat things like climate change and farming insecurity and all of these other issues that are allegedly contributing to people wanting to come to America for a quote-unquote better life.
Farming insecurity is one of my favorite ones now, by the way. Climate change and farming insecurity, that's the reason. That's the reason that was given by Kamala Harris as she landed from spewing how many tons of carbon into the atmosphere by flying her plane down there. And then also farming insecurity. She passed out little cookies in the shape of her face on the plane to all of the press reporters. We'll tell you details about that, too, but I'm pretty sure that farmers were involved in making those cookies as well. Keep it here. There's more on Kamala Harris at Guatemala to solve the border crisis.
Do not come. Do not come.
It's 521 on WMAL. By the way, Mark Krikorian, Center for Immigration Studies, will be joining us at 6:35 to delve further into Kamala Harris's visit to Guatemala and how it might make a difference or not in terms of our border crisis. Amber Athey, the press pool that traveled with Vice President Harris, were treated to a visit by the Veep. You know, they make a big show of like going back in the back of the plane. So the press sits in the back of the plane, and it makes it sound like it's all, oh, you guys get into the back. Trust me, I've been able to do this before with the Secretary of State last presidency, Secretary of State Pompeo. It's a pretty nice flight. Okay, you sit in the last row and you're still a real happy camper there. Okay, so the vice president traveled to the back of the plane to visit with the press and handed out cookies adorned with her likeness. So there's a frosting has been, her face is, there's no face on it. You can sort of like a make your own adventure thing. You can draw your own face on this thing, which actually should be a meme immediately on social media. But she was actually handing out cookies that had her own image on it, which is, I mean, it's one thing to actually have the cookie delivered to you when you're in the president's like, oh, yeah, you're on the vice president's plane. Here's a vice presidential cookie. It's like, Okay, that's a little weird. For her to personally hand them out, look, it's me. Take a gobble of it. What is that?
Narcissist much? I want to know what baker was responsible for this. Like, were they made in the White House? Did they weld a Kamala-shaped cookie cutter? Because whoever can get their hands on that is in for a nice time on eBay. That's for sure.
Absolutely. That'll fetch us some. Yeah, listen, it just seems to me, if you're on the Vice President of America's plane and you want to give away a memento, you give away, the Vice Presidential seal, perhaps, or something specific to the country, not the individual. Narcissism is exactly the right word for this. It's not about her. It's about the country, and it's about the office.
No, but of course, to her, it is all about her.
Yes.
And that's why she's been avoiding the border, because if she is in a photo op with these cages behind her, then all of a sudden she has a harder time running for president once Biden finally gets out of the way.
That's right. And I'm pretty sure she has locked up the Cookie Monster endorsement now for when she's ready. Kamala! Yes, we like Kamala! It's 528.
They pay for what you need at
105.9
Getting you going where you need to go at 537 on WMAL. I'm Larry O'Connor with O'Connor and Company. Keeping us company this morning, it's Double A, Amber Athey from Spectator. Good morning, Amber.
Good morning.
We're going to get lots of company later on. 6:35 brings us Mark Krikorian, Center for Immigration Studies. 7:05 is Bethany Mandel, homeschool and parenting advocate in Montgomery County. Also, Christian Davenport of Washington Post covers space. We're going to talk about his boss going up into space. And then at 8:35, Josh Kroshauer from National Journal talk about today's primary for the Democrats in Virginia. That's all coming up. Right now, we want to talk about the follow-up here to this Colonial Pipeline hack. This was the dark, what were they called?
Dark side.
Thank you, dark side. Come to the dark side.
Yeah, it's a little on the nose, don't you think?
Quite. They hacked the Colonial Pipeline owners, but I don't know what do you call it? The owners and operators, I suppose, of the Colonial Pipeline. It is remarkable the way this hack worked, because it sounded like when we first heard about it, it's like, oh my gosh, they were able to shut down the pipeline all through their cyber warfare. Well, not really. Actually, Colonial Pipeline shut down the pipeline. Oh, well, the hackers forced them into it, because if they didn't shut it down, then they would say, well, no, actually, they did it voluntarily. What the hackers did was they got into the billing system. Colonial Pipeline. And Colonial Pipeline was like all this oil and is chugging through, and it's like we can't bill anybody for this because our system's always like, okay, shut it down. We're not going to send that out if we can't make any money off of it. So number one, I think that policy needs to be visited, first of all. But secondly, Colonial Pipeline did something very smart. The second that this happened, and a lot of companies don't do this, Amber, they immediately contacted the federal authorities. There are a lot of companies who have been victims of ransomware over the last several years, and they're embarrassed about it. They think it'll make them look bad publicly. They're worried about, sending a message to the public that they're in some way don't have security, that they're vulnerable, which they are. Well, these guys went right to the feds, and the feds were on it immediately. And that's what you should do, by the way, if you work for a company or if you manage or own a company that is susceptible to this sort of thing, because the feds can actually put some pieces together. There's quite an infrastructure right now. It's not perfect, but there's quite an infrastructure for cyber defense in this country at the federal government level and also in the military. And apparently that allowed the U.S. government and the Justice Department to follow the trail of the Bitcoin that was paid out in ransom, so far that they were able to locate and seize 2.27 million out of the alleged 4.4 million ransom that was put out there, which is shocking to me, actually. I mean, listen, I don't know a whole lot about cryptocurrency, but my understanding of it is it's not unlike when you receive Bitcoin, it's not unlike receiving digital files, right? And you can either keep it on the cloud or keep it to store it somewhere on the internet, or you can actually download all of the information onto a portable and removable hard drive. And that's your currency. It's like money, right? And you can then carry it with you. You can keep it in a safe deposit box. You can dole it out, in small amounts later. You can spread it around. Apparently, these guys didn't do that. They just let it hang there, and it was tracked down.
Which is really bizarre because, if these guys were so digitally sophisticated that they could get into the payment system, you would think they would do a better job of covering their tracks.
Yes, it's curious, isn't it?
I also wonder if, and the questions have been asked about this before, if the government didn't actually arrange this ransom payment with Colonial Pipeline so that they would have an easier means of tracking the payment.
Interesting.
And I think people have alluded to this in questions to Joe Biden. I mean, he's not running anything anyway, so he has no idea. But they asked him if he was briefed on the ransomware, on the ransom payment.
Uh-huh.
And he said very curiously, I don't want to comment on that.
Right.
Which
suggests that
he knew
was.
something.
Yeah, exactly.
But the fact that they were able to recover the money is obviously good news for national security, because this wasn't the only ransomware attack that's taken place in the past couple of weeks. These hackers also went after the JBS meat supplier, which is one of the top 3 meat suppliers in the United States. It's a Brazilian company. And then also the Massachusetts Steamship Authority. So they were going after all of the major areas of American industry.
I'm curious as to why we had this big and somewhat detailed press conference yesterday where Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco said that you follow the old adage, follow the money, and it still applies even when using sophisticated use of technology and cryptocurrency. And they laid out quite a few details about how they were able to do this, which I wish they hadn't, because basically they're letting all of these hackers know what not to do next time. They should have just said, we're real smart, we found them, and we'll find the next ones, period, end of story. Meanwhile, there is a question here now about what we should be doing as a nation for our national security policy with regard to countries that give safe harbor to these hackers. We know that these hackers are out of Russia. We know that. It's without a doubt. And there is an understanding within our national security apparatus that Vladimir Putin and the government in Moscow absolutely knows about it, and they tolerate it. There is this tacit agreement with these hackers saying, Vladimir Putin basically says, yeah, you go and do it whatever you want with everyone else, the Americans, but you don't touch us. You touch us, you end up in a ditch somewhere. That's how Vladimir Putin operates. That's not how he talks at all. And Senator Lindsey Graham says, no, that's not enough. We got to hold Russia accountable for this. You know, all the calls for holding Russia accountable for the fake, fraudulent conspiracy theory of Russian meddling in the 2016 election, you know, everyone's jumping. What are you going to do? You got to punish them. You got to. Here, they're actually allowing hackers to attack our country randomly and indiscriminately, and the Biden administration says nothing about it.
Yeah, well, here's why. Just recently, the Biden administration decided to waive sanctions on a Russian gas pipeline company.
Amazing.
So, I mean, how are they going to be tough on Russia after they just gave them, after, by the way, shutting down the Keystone XL pipeline, giving Russian gas companies the means to proliferate their product, much to the chagrin of Ukraine, by the way.
Yeah.
Biden, meanwhile, has a big meeting with Vladimir Putin coming up at the G7 this week. At the end of the G7, they're going to have a sit-down meeting. This will be one of his biggest tests as president. He hasn't really faced an adversary or a tough foe like this before. And
well,
there's
his
already
emissaries
questions.
did with China up in Alaska, and that did not go well for the Biden administration.
No, it did not. So I think everyone's waiting with bated breath to see how this meeting's going to go.
Amber Athey, are you saying that Biden could be Putin's puppet?
Is this another Russian conspiracy?
It's 5:44. Give it time. Give it time. It's 5:44 on W. On O'Connor and Company, WMAL, Larry O'Connor here, and Amber Athey, double A, from Spectator, Washington editor there, helping us out and keeping us company all morning long. So we've come a long way from hold the pickle, hold the lettuce, special orders don't upset us. That means nothing to you, does it?
No.
That is before your time.
I know. What is it? Have it your way?
Well, that is have it your way. That's
is that
how
what
it's
it
said.
is?
Hold the pickle, hold the lettuce. Special orders don't upset us. All we ask is that you let us serve it your way. Oh. Have it your way.
Sorry.
How about 2 all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun?
I know that one.
All right, good. Whew, man, that was close. We've come a long way from there with regard to how you market your fast food edibles here. Burger King is basically trolling Chick-fil-A on Twitter now. It's not enough that they have a chicken. Have you noticed everyone now has a chicken sandwich? And they've all come out with like new iterations of their chicken sandwich. Popeyes, I think, made the biggest splash last year. Did you try
Theirs
the Popeyes?
Is awesome.
Is it?
It's actually better.
Should
than
I go
Chick-fil-A.
there? I know everybody says, well, this is better than Chick-fil-A and that's better and I'm sure they are. See, here's the thing about Chick-fil-A. It's not really just because it's a great chicken sandwich. It's the whole thing.
Right.
It's all the other items on the menu and it's the service. It is
the
so
service
impeccable.
Is unreal. Also, their milkshakes are unbelievable.
Yeah. I haven't had a milkshake in a while. I should probably indulge in one of those.
I don't know. They're pretty bad for you.
My kids like the lemon Frosties or something. That they do like a frozen lemon whip at Chick-fil-A or something
nice.
that they
Very
really
refreshing.
do. But the waffle fries are great. They got the little hash browns in the morning.
The sauce.
Of all the sauces,
All
what's
the
your sauce? See, here we were going to. This is your fault, Burger King, because you never mention your competition in your advertising.
That's
Because
exactly
now
right.
all
Now
we're
all
doing
we
is
just
talking
wanna-
about Chick-fil-A. Do you have a sauce combo for your sandwich?
I do. I am big into, obviously, the Chick-fil-A sauce, but
Yeah.
also the buffalo sauce because it
yes.
adds a little kick.
You betcha.
And then on a rare day when I'm feeling a little frisky, I might dip into the Polynesian.
Okay, I'm very similar to you, frisky with the Polynesians. That's a whole other story that I'll save for my late night show. I do. So I use the Chick-fil-A sauce only for dipping the waffle fries into. I don't actually like it on the sandwich, but I do like it as a waffle fry
It is a good
dip.
waffle fry condiment.
On the sandwich, I do a combination of the buffalo sauce and the sweet sriracha.
Oh, brilliant.
Which is a little spicier than the Polynesian, but it gives it
Oh.
that tang, and it's nice. So you get a little sweet and
Sweet
a
and
little
spicy.
and a little Asian, and it's nice. It's nice. Anyway, Burger King has a chicken sandwich, and
well, they really bungled this one, didn't they?
they're really trying to get everybody's attention. So they started attacking Chick-fil-A on social media, but not based on the taste of their chicken sandwich, the quality of their chicken sandwich, the efficiency of the delivery method of their chicken sandwich. And, you know, when you're marketing a product and you don't mention those fundamental things, like it tastes good, it's higher quality, it's better, and we're going to deliver it to you faster and with a better smile or whatever it means. If you're talking about other things other than that, it means you've got something to hide. So right now, I'm already suspicious of this chicken sandwich, all right? But here's where they, I think, really made a big mistake. They targeted Chick-fil-A over their values, over their principles. What they said was, and I'm trying to find the exact tweet here. Is it in here? Shoot. Help me out here, Amber, if you've seen it. I'll look for the exact tweet. But basically, they said for every sandwich that they sell, every chicken sandwich, they're going to make a donation to an LGBTQ plus organization. And then they went one step further, which is really rude. And they said, oh, and by the way, you can buy it on Sundays. Chick-fil-A, of course, is notoriously closed on Sunday because of their own religious principles. Bad idea, Burger King.
That's a very bad idea. People have tried to cancel Chick-fil-A for at least a decade, and it's just good enough where it doesn't matter. And even people who hate their values still eat there.
Yes.
There is a very successful Chick-fil-A in the part of New York City, of all places.
Oh, yeah.
And it's doing real well.
Oh, they made a big show about it. You're not welcome here with your values and your. There is a line outside the block of the Chick-fil-A in Midtown Manhattan. I think it's on 39th Street. It's in the Fashion District on 7th Avenue every single day. And, oh, by the way, the only fast food joint in all of Manhattan where you will get service fast with a smile, where you can have a nice conversation with the person behind the counter. I mean, that's the difference maker with
You
Chick-fil-A.
can use the bathroom without having a special coin handed out to you by the cashier.
Or a hazmat suit, for that matter. Have you been to a Manhattan? It's not good. So, yeah, the actual tweet from Burger King, why is it nobody actually had, everyone has an article about the tweet, but they don't actually have the language of, here it is. They're also calling it the Chick King. CHKING.
Doesn't really roll off the tongue.
Chick King. It's Pride Month, by the way. Have you heard that it's Pride Month? I don't know if you've seen that or not, because they should make a bigger deal out of it on Pride
There's
Month.
not enough flags around D.C., that's for sure.
The Chick King says LGBTQ plus rights. Well, now, first of all, that's not actually a sentence. What it says, what do you mean says LGBTQ plus rights? Says what about LGBTQ plus? All right. During Pride Month, even on Sundays, your chicken sandwich craving can do good. We're making a donation to, it's Human Rights Campaign for every Chick King sold. And then they put a little rainbow flag on there, which, by the way, is exclusionary because they're not including the trans flag. So where's the TQ and plus there, Burger King? Human Rights Campaign is forget about being pro-gay rights. They're just an adamantly far-left political action committee that helps Democrats across the board. This is, if you're buying anything at Burger King, you're supporting the Democratic Party.
That's
period.
exactly
End
right.
of discussion.
Yeah, I mean, the Human Rights Campaign is one of the major lobbyists for the Equality Act, which, of course, would do things like allowing biological men to compete in women's sports and a whole host of other far-left progressive policies. But I don't see how this is going to be effective because I have had so many conversations with gay friends of mine, and even I was in an Uber once with a gay driver, and he goes, I go to Chick-fil-A all the time, and I have to hide the empty bags from my boyfriend because he gets mad at me, but I just can't stop going. He guilt eats Chick-fil-A. That's how much they love it.
We are not endorsing Chick-fil-A sandwiches and telling you should go get them because that costs good money here on WMAL to get that kind of endorsement. We're just letting you know where these various fast food companies stand. And when you buy your chicken sandwich, well, just be aware of where your money's going. It's 5:53 on WMAL.
Now, O'Connor and Company.
A very good morning from WMAL and the whole team here on O'Connor and Company. I am Larry O'Connor, and we've got plenty of help to get you through this morning. Mark Krikorian in 30 minutes joins us from Center for Immigration Studies. That's at 6:35. At 7:05, Bethany Mandel, homeschooling mom, editor at Ricochet, and an activist here for parents in the Washington area. 8:05 is Christian Davenport, reporter covering space for the Washington Post. We'll talk about Jeff Bezos quitting his job to go into space. In fact, you and I are talking about that in a moment. Josh Kraushaar from National Journal joins us at 8:35 for a good preview of today's Democrat primary in the Commonwealth of Virginia. All morning long, we're being kept company by Amber Athey, AA, over there at Spectator, the Washington editor. Good morning, Amber. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
I got to say, I mean, we've always known that Chris Plant is a prophet of sorts, but boy, he called this one. He's been calling Jeff Bezos Dr. Evil for years now. He's a billionaire. He's bald. He wants to control the world. And now he wants to control the universe. He's built his own rocket, not unlike Dr. Evil in the second of the Austin Powers films. He has built his rocket called Blue Origin, and yesterday he announced that he was stepping down as master of the universe. No, wait, that's what he wants to be. He stepped down as the chairman and CEO of Amazon and all of the ancillary ownership deals that Amazon is responsible for so that he can live his lifelong dream and go up into space. He and his brother will be traveling on the Blue Origin rocket and will be traveling to space. And I got to ask, a lot of people want to do this. I mean, think about this. I mean, the guy can do anything. He can literally pretty much do anything that money can buy. And what he's decided is, I'm not only going to build my own rocket and I'm going to start commercial space travel, but I'm going to be on the maiden voyage. It's obviously been his dream. He wants to go to space. This is a big deal for him. Do you get it? I mean, does that speak to you? Is this something you have always done? Given the opportunity, would you take this trip into space as well? 888-630-9625. Do you want to go into space? Do you want to do what he's doing and just go into space, maybe do a quick suborbit and then come back? Do you want to go and actually do like a long time on a space station? Do you want to travel to another planet? Or maybe just the moon? Would you like to be one of those people that Elon Musk is trying to put together to colonize Mars, which is basically a one-way trip? You say bye-bye to Earth, and you're heading out to Mars for the rest of your life. Do you want to be that kind of pioneer? Where are you on this? Or are you terrified at this notion, and you like terra firma? 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. And by the way, if not you, would you like to send someone else out into space? We're taking bids on that as well at 888-630-WMAL. I'm of multiple minds on this. I do like the idea. I want to experience weightlessness. That would be cool. But I ain't going up, Amber, with Jeff Bezos. I mean, right now, if you want to go up to space, you've got your choice between NASA or one of these three multi-billionaires, Jeff Bezos or Richard Branson, who is in charge of the Virgin Empire, right? Or Elon Musk. And if I am hitching my wagon to anybody's rocket to hurtle me up into suborbit, it's going to be Elon Musk. I have a much higher trust level with him. But even that's questionable. I don't know if I want to do this. I'm open to the idea. What about you?
I have zero interest whatsoever.
No.
I don't trust this at all. There's way too many unknown variables. So many things that could go wrong. I'm already claustrophobic too. So if I start to panic, or if something small goes wrong, I'm going to blow it way out of proportion. I'm going to be super stressed out the entire time. It doesn't interest me. I would be terrified. I'm good right here with my feet planted on sweet Earth. Now,
do you have problems like just flying on planes? Does that happen because there are risks involved there?
No, but I mean, planes are safer than cars, right? I mean, there are much fewer deaths by plane than via automobile.
There are even fewer deaths by rocket.
Yeah, but how many have blown up without people inside?
Well, I guess. It's funny, Meredith and I just finished watching From the Earth to the Moon. I had never seen it, the series that Tom Hanks did for HBO about the Apollo missions, the entire Apollo program. And yes, they did have some accidents, and tragically 3 astronauts died during the Apollo, in Apollo 1. But they died on Earth. It didn't even blast off. It was during a test, right? But yeah, I mean, of course there are dangers involved with this, but there's also this sense of adventure, isn't there? Do you never stare up at the stars and just think, I want to get there someday?
No, I'm not a very adventurous person. I always see these people on social media talking about how they are travel junkies and they want to find people to go on adventures with. That just doesn't speak to me.
You're a bit of a homebody.
I'm a little bit of a homebody,
but stay home with your cat.
I'm also just very risk averse. I don't like putting myself in unnecessarily risky situations. I would rather watch a scary movie to get my adrenaline rush.
I see.
Then afterwards I can have a cup of tea and go to bed and know that I was never in any real danger.
So this is happening a couple of weeks. What about you, by the way? Are you up for space flight? And if so, which of the multi-billionaires do you trust with your life, literally, to send you off into space? 888-630-9625. Sue in Vienna. Come on in here, Sue. You are first up on O'Connor and Company. Oh, never mind there, Sue. Did I get the wrong one there? Oh, all right. Let's go to Sue. Sue, are you there? No. All right, we'll get Sue. Sue in Vienna succinctly said, sell your Amazon stock now. So this is not going to end well for Jeff Bezos. First of all, I think Amazon can go on just fine without Bezos at the helm these days. This is going to happen, by the way, a couple of weeks after Bezos officially steps down as CEO. Apparently, he wanted to step down so that he didn't want to go up there as CEO of Amazon. He thought that would be irresponsible or something. I'm not sure. But there's also now this thing. They're calling it the New Shepard, by the way. The New Shepard, obviously named after Alan Shepard. And they're bidding out. They're bidding out for a seat on this thing. You too can fly, and they're doing it as an auction. Blue Origin is based out of Seattle, and it's already flown this rocket 15 times without passengers, and everything's been fine. All right, so there's 15 voyages. Everything's worked perfectly. And they're auctioning off a seat. You could fly up. Now, the current high bid yesterday at around noontime was $2,800,000. 3 hours later, it got to $3,200,000. And it continues to rise. So people are actually bidding for the opportunity to fly in space with Jeff Bezos. Tommy in Fredericksburg. Come on in here, Tommy. You're on WMAL.
Hey, Larry. Love your show.
Thank you.
I'm a first-time caller. I'm currently making my commute to Baltimore, actually. But, yeah, I'd love to go out into space. I don't know if I would trust Jeff Bezos, but I'd love to go with Elon Musk to Mars. But I'd probably wait until the second trip he takes people on, not the first one.
So now this is fascinating because the trip to Mars is a one-way trip. Elon Musk has said you're probably never coming back.
Right. Yeah, I get that. I've always thought it'd be really cool to be, part of the people who go to other planets and colonize and all that. But I recognize that, usually when they send people the first time, there's going to be a lot of, possible errors, and you'd probably be a little bit safer going on the second trip than on the first one.
So, Tommy, do you have I'm just curious because I find I've met people who I actually met somebody who went through a whole program to qualify for colonization of Mars. Do you have a family? Are you married? I mean, what's your story?
Well, I'm 21. I got parents and a sister, but no family that I've developed on my own yet. But if I could take a significant other with me, then I would. But
yeah.
No.
All right, Tommy. Well, listen, God bless you, and maybe you'll get your dream someday. I mean, you're right in the wheelhouse of age where this thing might happen for you, and I appreciate it. And good luck finding a significant other to go with you up to Mars. I can guarantee you this. It won't be Amber Athey.
Sorry.
She ain't going anywhere near Mars with you or anyone, Tommy. It's nothing personal. We've also noticed something about the shape of of Jeff Bezos' rocket that we have to discuss as well. So we'll continue this. I do want to hear from you if you're willing to go to space with Bezos or anyone for that matter. 888-630 WMAL. It's 6:15. WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes on the 5s. Lisa Baden's in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center. Well, you can go. It's only going to cost you a few $1 million to travel on Blue Origin. That's the rocket designed by Jeff Bezos. And he's quit his job as CEO of Amazon, and he's going to go hurtle himself into space and do suborbit with his brother. Now, his rocket is called Blue Origin, as I said. The Falcon Heavy is the biggest SpaceX rocket that's now being tested by Elon Musk. And that I have more confidence in that rocket. There's something about seeing that. And also, again, everything that Elon Musk does has a certain element of style to it, right? He's like the Steve Jobs of this generation. It's not enough just to do a computer or a phone, but it has to look cool. And and everything about the Elon Musk rockets, I think, look cool. Even to the it's all covered in like that really shiny stainless steel on the outside. It looks cool.
Yeah,
that's the only word I can come up with.
It's true. I mean, he understands aesthetics to a great degree. And when you look at his mother, by the way, who's basically a style icon, it explains a lot. She is a
lovely,
fashionable lady.
Yes, I saw her tweet. I think it was Elon Musk's birthday or something. She tweeted a picture of Elon Musk as a toddler. And I was like, I've never seen her before. She is a very stylish lady. You're right. Meanwhile, the styling of the Blue Origin rocket, I mean, we're looking at this thing, and it's like a really big, massive booster, right? Because it's not as tall as the Saturn V that sent the Apollo mission to the moon, but it's very big. And then on top of it is this giant sort of oversized, half cylindrical sort of pod with a lot of windows. And I guess that's where you'll be strapped in and you'll just sort of hurtle into orbit. And then that's what returns to space. It's much bigger than the command module on the Apollo missions. It appears to be, at least. It's certainly bigger than the Mercury 7 little tight capsule that they shot into orbit originally with John Glenn and Neil Shepard. But you mentioned this when you first, you Googled it. It's like, I want to see what the rocket looks like, right? And it's sort of, what's the word you used?
Phallic.
Colonel, you better take a look at this radar.
What is it, son?
I don't know, sir, but it looks like a giant...
Wang! Pay attention.
I was distracted by that enormous flying...
Willie. Yeah. What's that? Well, it looks like a giant...
Johnson.
Yes, sir.
Get on the horn to British intelligence and let them know about this.
All right, we're not proud, but we're not beneath a little Austin Powers humor, but that it does. You're right. You're absolutely right, Amber.
Anybody can Google it if they're doubting me.
I had not seen it before, but it's inexplicable, and one must wonder if Jeff Bezos has, I don't know, something to prove with this mission.
That could be, or maybe he has a better sense of humor than any of us ever realized. This could be the ultimate troll, right?
And all of the world's cable stations and media are going to be watching this thing, and it's like, who's going to be the first one to say it?
He's just made billions of dollars for the pleasure of orchestrating this ridiculous dad joke on the entire world.
Right, it's a big one, as it were. Paul in Ashburn. Paul, are you going off into space with Bezos or anyone for that matter? Paul,
no,
you're not doing it.
No, and I have a question. If they're auctioning off these seats, it's all rich people going up there. So something bad goes wrong, we could lose the top 1% in one swipe. Who are the liberals going to tax then?
Well, although it is the top 1% who were stupid enough to strap them onto this giant rocket and hurtle themselves up into space. So, I mean, I don't know if our economy relies necessarily on them. But you actually make a good point in terms of insurance. I mean, Jeff Bezos is an important guy to his company, to his family. He's literally either the richest or second richest person on any given day. How do you underwrite something like this? I mean, do you think, are his insurance companies calling saying, yeah, you're on your own, Bezos?
Yeah, I don't know. There must be some attempt to have insurance because people like models and other individuals who have their appearance or their bodies be part of their work, stunt performers, stunt doubles, they all have body parts insured.
That's
So, I mean, maybe there's space life insurance now.
It could be. Well, we will. It is a fascinating phenomenon, though, as you see this. And this is a fun time to be alive when it comes to space travel, if you love space travel. And I do. I don't necessarily want to do it. I'm not close to it. But it is a fascinating thing to watch, the engineers involved in getting these things done. And the leaps and bounds in engineering, because these boosters now, they don't just fall into the ocean anymore. These things land on their own and are reusable. It's incredible to watch. This is an amazing time to be alive if you're fascinated by this. Our fathers and grandfathers, they made it through the space race when it was the Soviets versus the Americans. Now we've got a new space race, and it's not nation against nation. It's billionaire against billionaire with Bezos, Branson, and Musk, sort of these new space barons. Coming up at 8:05, we're going to speak with Christian Davenport. He actually wrote the book called The Space Barons, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and the quest to colonize the cosmos. And we'll get some more details on exactly what this is all about a little later in the program. It's 6:23, O'Connor and Company on WMAL.
105.9 FM.
I love that you offer different opinions.
Washington's Mall, WMAL.
That's really important to us.
Where Washington comes to talk.
Coming up on O'Connor and Company, Mark Krikorian for Center for Immigration Studies talk about Vice President Kamala Harris in Guatemala and whether it will actually make a difference for the root causes of the border crisis, plus a huge unanimous decision from the Supreme Court that might put a stop to this whole pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants. Mark Krikorian next on O'Connor and Company, getting you going this Tuesday morning.
Now, O'Connor and Company.
105.9 FM, WMAL. It is 6:37 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. We're getting you through this Tuesday morning with everything you need to know. Coming up at 7:05, Bethany Mandel, homeschooling mom, editor at Ricochet.com, and a local activist, talk about this surge in homeschooling. A lot of parents making that choice now. Christian Davenport joins us at 8:05, Washington Post writer there covering space issues, talk about Bezos getting up into orbit. And then at 8:35, Josh Kraushaar, politics editor, National Journal, about today's Democrat primary in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Amber Athey, Washington editor of Spectator, keeping us company all morning long. Amber, good Tuesday to you.
Good Tuesday to you as well.
I want to be clear to folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border. Do not come. Do not come.
Well, she said it twice, therefore that'll make the biggest difference in the world. Mark Krikorian is the executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies, and he joins us now. Mark Krikorian, when Vice President Harris says that in Guatemala, do not come, are the people of Guatemala listening, or do they, frankly, know better exactly what's going to happen when they go to the border?
They know better. People, it is essentially Kamala Harris was saying, do as I say, not as I do. Mm-hmm. Because you can tell people not to come all you want. During the Obama administration, they did the same kind of thing. They literally took out radio ads down there saying, it's dangerous in America, you'll be turned away. But the fact is, what we're doing at the border is even worse than what Obama was doing. All so-called unaccompanied minors are let into the United States, and they'll never leave. And virtually all adults bringing children with them are let go into the country and will never leave. And there's such a crush at the border that a lot of just single adults are able to, get past the Border Patrol successfully, and they're also never going to be made to leave. That's what counts. Those people call home and say, hey, we pulled it off. They let us go. Some of them even get work permits if they're the adults with kids. Mm-hmm. They make some kind of asylum claim. And that's what counts. Actions count, not words.
Kamala was greeted by protesters when she got to Guatemala holding signs like Trump won and go home. I got to ask, Mark, did Kamala Harris tell Guatemalans not to come to the United States as payback for this awful protest?
No, I'm not sure. I still think, the grammar and everything was too good. I'm just thinking some of those, there were Americans who, had relatives and went down and arranged that. I don't know. But that's the whole point of her trip. Was to tell people not to come because, in a sense, this was political theater, and there were two goals. One, and neither one of them has to do with immigration, really. The first is to make the administration look like it's doing something responsive at the border without actually doing anything about the border. And the second one was to give her a show overseas to make it look like she's involved in foreign policy, so that there's an honor guard. He steps off of, Air Force 2, all of that stuff. It's a show so that when she runs in 2024, she'll be able to say, well, look, I have these foreign policy chops. That's all this is about. I don't think even they expect this to do the slightest bit of good at the border.
Mark Krikorian, the vice president, did also bring a check with her for billions of dollars, ostensibly to help create jobs in Guatemala and also to help fight back against climate change. Is that the so-called root cause of this migration that we're seeing out of Guatemala, climate change and lack of jobs in that country?
I mean, there's no question that there are reasons people want to leave. I mean, there are no people from Norway, coming across our border because, why would you? So a place has to be poor and have bad governance in order for lots of people to want to leave. But that's necessary to have a border crisis, but it's not sufficient, because what's actually causing people to decide, hey, things are bad here, but let's pick up and move to the U.S., that is our policies causing that. It's nothing to do with root causes. And, even if this money were to do any good as far as so-called root causes, which it's not, it would be decades before it made any difference. It has nothing it can have no effect on what's going on.
Well, and of course, she's getting flack on her left flank here from the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who did not like what she had to say and also said, listen, we created this mess. We set fire down there because we've created instability in the region. America should admit that, own that, and then maybe we can fix the problem. Does she have a point?
Well, I mean, yeah, we, over the past, not quite 100 years, we've gotten involved in Central America as well as the Caribbean quite a bit. It's because it's our backyard. But, it's not every country is sending people to the U.S. A lot of countries are. It's because we let them come. And what AOC basically is saying is that we, as penance, we have to leave our borders open to anyone in the world. And I would just add a final point, an increasingly large share of the people taking Biden and Harris up on, their weak policies and coming at the border are not even from Central America or Mexico. They're coming there's gypsies from Romania. There's people from India and Brazil coming over. They've gotten the message around the world that this administration is a patsy when it comes to the border, and they're acting on it.
Mark, can you walk us through this Supreme Court decision about illegal immigrants with temporary protected status? The court apparently ruled that they're not eligible to seek permanent residency.
Yeah, unanimously, by the way.
Yeah, it's the numbers of people that this would affect aren't that big, but it's an important statement that the law actually means what it says. TPS, the so-called temporary protected status, is something we give to illegal immigrants who are here when something bad happens in their country, so that we don't, so we temporarily let them stay until the country gets back on its feet, and then we can deport them again. It's temporary part is false. They end up staying for 10, 20 years because we just renew it over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, can they convert that, adjust to getting a green card if they have some kind of other way of getting a green card? The law specifically says you can't get a green card if you have this status. That's what it says. That's why the ruling was 9-0 in the Supreme Court. So what it is a rebuke to the lawless elements of our judiciary in the Ninth Circuit and elsewhere, who just make stuff up off the top of their heads. That's why it's an important result, that even the three leftists on the court said, look, the law says what it says. You can't just make stuff up. And that's actually the third unanimous rebuke of lower courts on immigration literally in 2 weeks. So that's what's encouraging about this.
It is, and we got to look at the upside whenever we do get it, especially with this crisis continuing on the border and no end in sight. Mark Krikorian, Center for Immigration Studies, always good to start our days with you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
On the next Vince Colonnese show, the Biden administration promising that cyber attacks are only going to get worse. Who's defending us? Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m. on WMAL.
And I'm Larry O'Connor with O'Connor & Company, getting you to work today or wherever you're going. And Amber Athey, it's always good to have you here from Spectator because you cover the White House. You cover this White House. You cover the last White House. And you're in that room, in the briefing room. Were you there yesterday, by the way, for the first full capacity, or did you not?
I was not. I was taking a nap after
this
early wake-up call.
Our bad. Sorry about that. But that's it. But you missed a brilliant moment of journalism. Yamit Alcindor, she is a White House correspondent for PBS, which means you and I and all of you, we help pay her salary with our tax dollars. And she uses your good hard-earned tax dollars converted through the public broadcasting system, through government grants, into her paycheck. She used it to speak truth to power, my friends. Here's her question to National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan of the utmost national security importance that every mind in America has been burning with this question that must be answered.
Thank you so much. My question is, can you talk a bit about how President Biden plans to convince, especially our European allies, that former President Trump was an anomaly in some ways? All of the things that he did to, in some ways, traumatize those leaders, calling into question the need for NATO. What's the plan there? And is he concerned that those scars are going to be deeper than his ability to address them in this one trip?
I think our view...
I don't care what his answer is. Honestly, this is really all about the question, and that's why Yamich asked it, because it's all about her. Amber, honestly, I mean, I understand. First of all, she's supposed to be nonpartisan. She's supposed to not wear her politics on her sleeve. There are journalists there, like yourself. You're open about your political leanings, but you still... You have a perspective, yes, but have you ever asked a question like that?
Oh my gosh, I would never dare, because can you imagine the backlash that a person on the right, a conservative, would receive if we were seen just bowing to an entire administration like this? By the way, a press briefing is not a therapy session.
Yeah,
she's talking about trauma and scars.
The scars and the trauma.
The world leaders are traumatized.
Oh, poor Germany. He said mean things about Merkel.
Yeah, meanwhile, Biden is about to meet with the leader of Russia after they've been apparently harboring these people who are committing ransomware attacks against major areas of American industry. And this is what she asked the National Security Advisor.
And he actually engaged. You know, honestly, maybe I'm naive. Maybe I think too much of people. I would like to think that Jake Sullivan's better angels. I guess we should hear his answer now that I'm analyzing it. I would think that his better angels would be, you know what, that American governments, we have different policies than the previous administration, but you know, I'm not going to get down into that. That's not appropriate. That would be it. No, of course he didn't. But I do want to analyze the question a little bit more, because it's obviously she's reading this question, which means she sat down and she crafted it. And she really wanted to get the wording right. And she wanted to be, you know, it's not like it's off the top of her head. She put time into this.
Thank you so much. My question is, can you talk a bit about how President Biden plans to convince, especially our European allies, that former President Trump was an anomaly in some ways? All of the things that he did to, in some ways, traumatize those leaders, calling into question the need for NATO. What's the plan there? And is he concerned that those scars are going to be deeper than his ability to address them in this one trip?
I got to say, why, and we will, I promise you, we will hear National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan's answer here. Why is it an anomaly for a president of the United States to step up and call into question the need for a treaty that was put into place several decades ago? I mean, literally generations ago, when you're talking about NATO, and it was put into place when the geopolitical circumstances in Europe were extraordinarily different than they are right now. If the conditions on the ground, as they were back at the dawn of the Cold War and the Iron Curtain and the Soviet dominance and their exploration into Western Europe, that called for a NATO alliance. That no longer exists now. Now, NATO's still there, but it's really an anomaly and a traumatizing moment for a president to say, let's re-examine this and see whether it's still in play.
Right. And if he's traumatizing world leaders by doing things like, asking them to pay their fair share in these international institutions
that they've agreed to do for decades and
signed an agreement, just didn't do it. I mean, if these people are traumatized by that, then I'm much more optimistic about the future of American dominance than I ever have been before.
That's right.
We're in good shape, actually.
Cowering in fear from us, and it's about time. All right, here's the answer.
I think our view going into this trip is that actions speak louder than words, and that showing that the United States is capable of turning the corner on the pandemic, showing that the United States is capable of making the dramatic investments that will pull us up and out of this economic recovery and help power global growth, showing the world that we are ultimately capable of making the investments in R&D and infrastructure, innovation, and workforce. Ultimately, setting that foundation for this country will be the most effective way to show the rest of the world that the United States has the power and purpose to be able to deliver as the world's leading democracy.
You know, my better instincts were correct. We shouldn't have listened to the answer because I'm not instilled with any confidence. Well, there's Yamiche Alcindor. She is your White House correspondent that you help pay for through your tax dollars for PBS. That's why we're happy that people like Amber Athey are in that room on a regular basis as well. Today is the Democrats' primary in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and you know what that means. Do you hear this sound? That is the sound of another day of Terry McAuliffe dancing very awkwardly and, in my opinion, menacingly on stage. If I was in that space, if I was one of the 12 people at that rally where Terry McAuliffe was doing whatever that was he was doing, I would be scared for my life.
There's some bad dancing that's endearing and kind of relatable, but this one is just creepy.
Yeah, like when Trump would do his little YMCA thing and he would just, barely move
tight.
the shape. He did. There's nothing tight about this. You've seen this video. There's a little bit of jiggly going on. But he is a very awkward white man. And you know what? Glass houses. I choose not to dance in public because I know my limitations. But the interesting thing about the Democrats, because they dwell on identity politics so much, is that he is basically, he's already been governor of Virginia, and he is standing in the way of a black man, Justin Fairfax, who has been lieutenant governor, and several white women, and a black woman, I believe, all trying to get that nomination. And he's saying, no, you stay back. I got this. Even though I've been governor before, it's time for me again.
And leaning into that identity, no less.
Yeah, we'll see. Coming up, we'll get a whole preview of it at 8:35 with Josh Krashauer from National Journal. It's Larry O'Connor on WMAL.
Now, O'Connor and Company.
Yeah, I don't know about you. I'm on like my 5th cup of coffee already. If you're just getting started, pour a hot one and let's get where you need to go. It's 7:07 right here on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. Coming up at 8:05, Christian Davenport covers space for the Washington Post, and we'll find out about his boss going up into orbit and what's going on with all these billionaires and their space race. Josh Krashauer of National Journal will join us at 8:35, and we'll talk about today's Democrat primary in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Keeping us company all morning long, Amber Athey, the Washington editor for Spectator, and doing a heck of a job. Amber, happy Tuesday to you.
Happy Tuesday.
We talked yesterday about these new pressures on women in the workplace, and there's articles in Forbes and in Wall Street Journal about how there's a changing face of women in the workplace right now as a result of the pandemic. A lot of women are choosing to go and stay at home, that is, working and modifying their work schedules so that they can stay at home. It's funny, depending on the publication that you read about this, some will say this is a crisis and it's horrible and that women, and I'm sure for some women it is a problem, but it's a daycare crisis. See, the reason that women are doing this is because they can't find adequate daycare, and that's forcing them out of the workplace. And nowhere in there is really the question, maybe women are choosing to do this. Maybe women actually want to do this. Maybe a year and a half after watching their children forced to stay at home and get an inadequate social, emotional, and educational experience from our government-run schools, they're deciding that they're choosing to do this because they're good parents and they want to make sure that their kids are getting the education they deserve. Well, let's explore that part of it because we're seeing a surge in homeschooling right now nationwide. Joining us to discuss is a mom of 4, as of now, editor at ricochet.com, Bethany Mandel. Thanks for joining us, and good morning, Bethany.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm a mom of 4 for not too much longer.
I know. I saw that on your social media yesterday. You are making all the final preparations, so good luck with it. Tell me what you're hearing, because I know that you've been engaged in Montgomery County here with a lot of moms who are facing this same dilemma. Everyone's getting back to work, but it's like, whoa. I'm in a groove with my kids now.
Yeah, so, I mean, in Montgomery County, I think a lot of people, just in an informal conversation people are having in the Montgomery County homeschooler groups, most of the parents who pandemic homeschooled are going back to public schools. A lot of them are going private because they don't trust the public schools anymore. There's been a lot of broken trust. But a lot of parents, I mean, because of the finances of where we live, can't really swing another year the way that they've done. And so I've seen anecdotally a lot of people leaving this area geographically because they want the life that they've had for the last year, but financially it's just so hard to swing when you live in the DC metro area on one salary.
You mentioned broken trust in the public school system. Can you identify what some of those areas are? I imagine there's obviously skepticism about the quality of these Zoom education classes, as well as perhaps the daily changing opinions, it seems, of the teachers' unions. What are parents telling you about why they're pulling their kids out?
So a lot of the broken trust is they were just lied to repeatedly over the last year. And it got to the point where they would be told that their kids were going to go back to school, and then they didn't, and these were the expectations. And then when that time arrived, the expectations were not upheld. And so it became a really sort of toxic relationship between parents and the school, because they just got to the point where, like, I don't believe anything you're saying about anything, and that doesn't include what you're telling me about when you're going back to school, but also what you're teaching my kids, because I can now see it in front of my face. And I'm not thrilled with the quality of education that I'm witnessing firsthand, and you can't really gaslight me anymore about it. So there's a lot of parents who are coming to the realization that everything that has happened in the last year did not happen in a vacuum, and the untrustworthiness goes well beyond the pandemic, and they don't want to entrust their children with these people anymore.
Corey DeAngelis, who is a homeschool and school choice, actually more precisely a school choice advocate, pointed out that in the state of Massachusetts right now, enrollment for homeschooling is up 120%, Bethany.
Yes.
Up until last year, the average has been staying around 3 to 4% nationwide with regard to homeschool children. It's now, as of 2020, up to 11%, an enormous leap nationwide for homeschooling. And I'm curious, from your perspective, when parents start making that choice and choosing to homeschool, will that then have political ramifications? Because in the past, we've seen homeschool parents, generally speaking, tend to have a certain political persona.
Yeah, I've absolutely seen it, and it's a tiny bit worrisome. It's something just to keep an eye on as a more conservative homeschooler, but we've definitely seen the emergence of sort of woke homeschooling and that perspective. But it'll be interesting to see how these folks sort of get red-pilled a little bit, because they've been red-pilled about the state of public education in our country. That's why they've decided to pull their kids out. But when they witness the full frontal attacks, which I think are absolutely coming on homeschooling from the public sector unions, they're going to have a reality check with themselves about what they think about public unions, and they're going to have to realize that, this is not about the kids. This is not about their best interest. This is about keeping the unions paid and keeping teachers employed, no matter what. And so I'm interested to see how these sort of progressive new homeschoolers adjust their perceptions of reality when faced with reality.
For parents out there who are interested in maybe taking this turn and homeschooling their kids full time, what advice can you give them, for first time homeschoolers?
So, I think my best advice is to meet socially with other homeschoolers, and just sort of get a lay of the land of what it's like under normal conditions, because this year was not normal.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of people have this sort of a not great impression of homeschooling as more isolating than it is. And just sort of hook up with people and say, like, what are the laws? What do you guys do? Because there are different ways to legally homeschool in every state. And what classes, what social opportunities are available? What curriculums do you guys use? What works for you? There's so much information out there on the curriculum front that it's really overwhelming. And it's nice to sort of have someone handhold you in the beginning and say, this is what works for us.
Well, and I'll jump in there because actually, ironically, Bethany, when your oldest became school age, you actually asked me. I'm a little older than you, and I homeschooled my kids for their first 8 years of school. You got to think of it 1 year at a time. Don't think, okay, I'm going to be a homeschool parent, and that means the next 12 years of each of my kids' life. No. Each year you have to reevaluate and decide whether it's the right decision for you and your kids that year. Otherwise, it's just too overwhelming. Bethany Mandel, one last question here, and we've only got about a minute left, but specific to women, specific to moms facing this issue and moms in the workplace, there is a lot of pressure circumstantially, social pressure, writ large in a macro way in the media and the pop culture, but also in a micro way on your Facebook page and your friends circle of friends that put pressure on moms who choose to stay home. And that's not easy to withstand that pressure, is it?
It's not, but I have to say it's gotten a lot easier over the last year because people don't ask me anymore what I do all day because now they know.
That's great.
And and also people are like, oh, I could see the appeal of this. I mean, being able to cook dinner at 3:00 in the afternoon and not having to rush out the door and not having to rush in the door. There's a lot of really nice blessings in being home with your kids that improve your relationship a great deal. A lot of people thought that they couldn't stay home because their relationship with their kid could not survive. But they're learning, I think, that their relationship with their kid was strained because they were constantly on the go.
Yeah.
And when you had a year that you weren't, you kind of realize like, oh, we created a lot of the problems that we were facing.
Really great insight from local birthing person, Bethany Mandel, a birthing person advocate. And just so you know, as you have another birth event coming up here, Bethany, Lawrence, Larry, a fine name with a great tradition, historical connections, biblical connections. Just throwing it out there. It's an option. I mean, Seths are a dime a dozen.
If you
but
are my birth assistant, then I'll think about it.
I'm not going anywhere near that. Thanks, Bethany. Good luck. Break a leg or whatever. What do you say? I don't know. Yeah, 7:16. Let's go straight to Lisa Bates. It's O'Connor and Company. Larry O'Connor here with Amber Athey, keeping us company all morning long. And, you know, Amber, I'm when men are looking to attract a woman for purposes of an amorous nature, let's say, listen, if you're not Brad Pitt, and you don't have Brad Pitt's looks or George Clooney or I don't know, whoever, depending on your generation, is sort of the it dude, then there are some other things that traditionally, historically, have been able to attract women to you. And I'm not trying to be demeaning or anything. It's just a fact. Like, for instance, if you're rather wealthy, generally speaking, women are attracted to that. Am I speaking out of turn?
Not at all. That's 100% accurate.
We see this happen.
We see it all the time.
See a nice woman with a guy. Well, he's a good. Well, that explains
right.
it.
And
Right.
She's gorgeous, and he's kind of a troll.
Right. Good way to put it. And I'm not saying all women are like that. I'm not. But by the way, men can be like that too. It's not right. And one way that a man who is troll, is that the word you're using? Troll?
Sure, we'll go with that.
A trollish man might attract a woman, or sort of send the signal up, sort of raise the flag up the pole. It's like, hey, got a healthy bank account here.
Yeah.
It's by a fancy set of wheels,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is why you see, the 60-year-old trollish balding man driving the Corvette. I will not be that guy. It's just because I make fun of that guy when I see it. It's like, I know what you're doing. I see exactly what you're doing. Which brings us to the story of Bill Gates, who is a very wealthy man. In fact, would you describe him as troll-like?
He's on his way there. He's not that bad. I've seen worse.
Really?
I mean, he's not like a Danny DeVito.
He's a nerdy dude.
He's
though.
very nerdy, but
And
that's not a troll.
That's
right?
true. Nerdy can be attractive, but I don't know. I've never thought of Bill Gates as a very attractive.
No,
man.
I wouldn't
don't
say
think,
that.
I don't think he's
Definitely not.
aging well either.
No.
And he's now going through this divorce, sadly, and we don't wish him any ill. Certainly, divorce is a traumatic experience, and it's even more traumatic when there are billions of dollars involved. And so we're getting these little leaks over and over again about this dirty, sordid little things that Bill Gates was involved with, including apparently some level of relationship with the late Jeffrey Epstein, who I'm told did not kill himself, by the way, in case you're keeping score at home. And this latest story now apparently talks about a very specialized, how it's being referred to as a sexy golden brown Porsche that he would use for his extramarital liaisons. And this has got to be coming from her divorce lawyers, right?
Oh, absolutely.
From Melinda's lawyers.
I mean, Melinda has probably the best PR team in the history of divorces, which I guess when you are married to someone who has billions of dollars, you get the best money can buy. What I'm a little confused about is I've never heard of golden brown?
A golden brown Porsche.
I've never heard that described as sexy before.
It does beg the question, as we are told not to say when we're writing our columns. If you're going to go all the way and get yourself a Porsche to get women's attention for your sexual liaisons, brown? Brown?
Right. It's a little off-putting.
I mean, red is a cliche.
Red's cliche.
And then Melinda's going to be like, okay, Bill, why do you need a red Porsche?
Yellow's too flashy. I mean, maybe you go with something sleek, like a black or silver.
Black.
But here's the problem. Apparently, he was using this Porsche as a replacement for I think it was a BMW or a Mercedes-Benz he drove to work every day. So he'd show up in one car, and then his aides would bring the Porsche over. Then he would get in the Porsche with the women.
Now that's rich.
Right.
If you're so rich that you drive your Benz to get to work and then you have a separate Porsche to get busy.
Right.
That's impressive.
So, I mean, he's going in with style, but it also gives him some plausible deniability, right? Because he said, I didn't drive the Porsche
There's
to
no
work today.
evidence in the car. There's no earrings are left or the scent of somebody else's perfume.
The Benz is still in the Microsoft parking lot.
He's not dumb. I will give him that. But he is
that was never in question.
A bit of a troll, though. It's 7:22, O'Connor and Company. Bill Gates is driving his golden brown, sexy Porsche sexmobile around the District of Columbia. He better stay to the posted speed limits because D.C. government has now announced they have instituted brand new speed cameras because there really weren't enough speed cameras in the District of Columbia, don't you think, Amber?
Oh, man, I've had enough tickets driving here at 3:30 in the morning.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, new red light enforcement. Now, these are specifically red light enforcement cameras now in place. District of Columbia Department of Transportation activated new cameras at the Interstate 695 off-ramp, ramp D, northbound 11th Street Southeast on Monday, and also new speed cameras in corridors on the 6500 block of 14th Street Northwest, 500 block of Florida Avenue Northeast, 23. I mean, there's 10, 12, there's 15 of it. Here's the point. When you're driving in the district, just set cruise on your car and don't try to go faster because they're going to get you. They're just going to get you.
It's inevitable. And these things are sneaky. They put them in very hard to see places.
Yep.
They cover them up with foliage, and they try to make it as difficult as possible. This is a huge moneymaker for the city.
It is, and they've got a problem coming out of COVID because not enough people were driving in. They suspended parking, so they need their money. Dang it.
I somehow still managed to get a parking ticket in the middle of COVID, so apparently I'm just cursed.
You are. I'm sorry about that. It's 7:27.
Now, O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:37 right here on WMAL. This is where Washington comes to talk, especially when you're waking up and getting where you need to go. And we're going to be right there with you, keeping you company. It's O'Connor and Company coming up at 8:05. We're going to hear from, this is going to be interesting, Christian Davenport, who covers space for the Washington Post. We'll talk to him about Jeff Bezos heading up into orbit. And then at 8:35, today is the Democrats' primary in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Josh Kroshauer, politics editor at National Journal, will give us details. Washington editor for The Spectator is Amber Athey, she's keeping us company all morning long. Amber, good morning.
Good morning, Larry.
And you are about to be initiated into a very important club. It is Critter News here on WMAL. It's all things animals, critters, creepy crawly, four legs, anything but a biped, although even some bipeds are critters, and they make the news, and we talk about them. And sometimes it's frightening. You have family in Frederick, don't you? You're a local gal. You grew up in Frederick.
That's correct. My entire immediate family is in Frederick County.
Do you call it Fredneck? I know some people call it Fredneck.
Sometimes I do. It depends on what part of Frederick you're talking about,
Lovingly.
Because Frederick City isn't Fredneck.
No, not at all. In fact, if I were to ever to refer to it, it would be in connection to someone locally calling it that, and I would just chime in. It's one of the, like, you're not allowed to call Prince George's County PG County unless you're actually from the county. I get very confused around here, and I'm trying to keep up.
Well, Fredneck can be used sparingly, but mostly by locals.
Well, let me ask, if you're living in a region of Frederick County where you might see a black bear treading in your backyard, are you possibly in the Fredneck region?
You might be in the Fredneck zone.
You may very well be in the Fredneck zone. Well, that's what happened. It's seasonal. Every year there seems to be sightings of bears, and depending on the climate and depending on what happened over the winter, they're more ubiquitous. I don't remember it being this early, though, but did you ever? There was a black bear sighting yesterday, and all of Frederick was a little a titter because it wasn't necessarily in the rural areas as much. It was a little more suburban. Did you ever see a bear growing up?
Not at my parents' place, but my brother actually lives in a more suburban area. I mean, they have large yards and everything, but he sees bears almost every year just walking down the street, apparently near his home.
Well, this was in downtown, like in the historic district.
Oh,
like
boy.
He's going to go hang out at Brian Voltaggio's restaurant or something.
Go to the tasting room.
Anything with honey. I'll just say anything with honey. Now, I got into a debate with some guests that I had over at the house who were like, black bears aren't that dangerous. Black bears are cool. If it's a brown bear, then you got a problem because that's like a grizzly or a Kodiak. You don't want to mess with them. But black bears are lovable. They don't want to get, and it's like, no, I don't want any kind of bear anywhere near me.
There's no such thing as a nice bear.
Yeah.
There's no domestic bear.
Thank you. It's like Paddington,
They're
maybe.
wild animals.
Winnie the Pooh, perhaps. But if it's an animated bear, I might go along with you, but not an actual bear.
No.
And, of course, there's videos of this, and it's a little disconcerting. It's not like it was in the middle of the night or at the crack of dawn. This was in the middle of the day, 2 in the afternoon. It's like, guys, there's a bear walking down the middle of downtown Frederick. So keep your eyes open, please.
They give out bear permits in Maryland. I wonder what the rules are for
really
for tagging a bear in downtown Frederick.
Meanwhile, of course, the dominant critter story of this time of our lives in the Mid-Atlantic has to do with these little critters. That's right. It's the soundtrack of the Washington area. It is the sound of cicadas, and something happened yesterday. They're like supercharged. They're turbocharged. They're insane. They've been swarming. But my drive home yesterday from the Beltway to Route 50, the second I turned east on 50, I started getting pelted by squadron. I thought birds were targeting my car with their excrement, and it was cicadas just jamming, like they were targeting my car.
Like kamikazes.
Yes, they were kamikazes dive bombing me. They're awful. I know our friend Chef Jeff also tweeted about this. Our friend Emily Dominich, who works with the Travis Manion Foundation, she was jogging and one flew into her mouth.
Ugh.
In fact, it got so bad that the local weather radars showed this like fuzzy, cloudy anomaly around a weather system yesterday, and they couldn't figure out what it was. It was the cicadas. They're getting picked up from space, Amber.
That is beyond disturbing. I will tell you, driving in this morning, you could see them actually swarming around all of the streetlights, and it almost looked like a cloud surrounding the streetlights, and they were coming out of the trees. Anyone who's been on a golf course recently can tell you when you finally end up getting your ball in the hole, which takes me longer than it should, you'll go to pull your ball out, and there are like 4 cicadas in the hole on the golf course.
Something left something fuzzy
and you don't
want to.
It's almost like you just want to have a gimme on every putt because you don't want to have to reach in
exactly
and to accidentally touch one of these
I could just
creatures.
have this. I don't need to sink this, do
right.
I? Can we just let's call this one in among friends?
Sometimes their wings will flutter when it goes in there, so you can hear like a little buzzing sound.
Oh, it's got to stop. And meanwhile, they can be a real nuisance if you're trying to maintain your social media presence. Our friend, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, of course, former White House official under the Trump administration, he took to social media as often he does, as we all do, and you do a little bit of a selfie video kind of thing, and you speak your mind and you explain what's going on in the world. And he went into his backyard, and well, you tell me, are you focused on what Gorka says or his critter friends?
Just how bad is the corruption in the Biden family, in the Biden administration? We're going to go deep dive on the Gorka reality check.
I'm sorry, I have no idea what he said. All I could hear were the bugs.
That is, I mean, people who don't live here don't realize how loud it can be when you're right next to a tree line, but it really is deafening. And I imagine it's similar to what people who have, what is the condition where you have the constant ringing in your ears?
Oh, yeah, tinnitus. Yeah.
It's almost like having tinnitus.
It's the soundtrack of our times, but we're told there's only 3 weeks to go, and it couldn't be soon enough. I'm sick of these guys. Goodbye, cicadas. It's 743 O'Connor and Company.
Washington's Mall.
So much common sense.
105.9 FM. WMAL.
More informed than anybody else.
Where Washington...
Hey, it's Chris Plant. Find out what the media don't want you to know. Coming up this morning at 9, right here on WMAL.
Amber Athey, I saw that you were writing at Spectator yesterday about Governor Ron DeSantis' new law that he signed. Boy, he's very active down there in Florida. And it's interesting to me that he keeps signing into law lots of statutes that should, you would think, be more of a federal issue, like his law with regard to social media, right? And the censorship in social media. It's like, well, is that really a state's issue? I mean, he's doing what he can for Florida. The vaccination passport thing, which actually has now changed the policies for Royal Caribbean cruise lines. You know, the CDC set guidelines that if you go on a cruise, you have to be vaccinated. Well, Governor DeSantis said in Florida that no business can force a vaccine passport and force people to prove their vaccination status. So Royal Caribbean's like, okay, then I guess we're not going to ask you to be vaccinated, and now there's going to be... So it's interesting what Governor DeSantis is doing here, and you like that sort of robust leadership from governors. So now he's taking aim at communist China. Talk to me about this new legislation.
Right. So there's actually 2 bills that he signed yesterday in a ceremony in Miami, Florida, and they name several what they call countries of concern, one of which is China. It also includes countries like North Korea and Venezuela and Cuba and some of these authoritarian regimes. One of the bills imposes stricter regulations on foreign researchers coming into the United States to go to institutions of higher education. Also, stricter regulations on funding for grants for research that is conducted in foreign countries. And otherwise, just try to keep a check on some of the infiltration of Chinese spies and also the exporting of state secrets, which has been a huge problem in higher education, one that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo under the Trump administration was very interested in combating in places like the Confucius Institutes across these universities.
Something that we know, in fact, has been happening. There actually have been arrests. There was a chemistry professor out of Harvard who was arrested trying to smuggle things back to China, and he had been funded through one of these things. Obviously, what Governor DeSantis does in Florida only affects the institutions and personnel there in the state of Florida. But again, he's bolstering his bona fides there for when he runs, and he is running in 2024 for the Republican primary. Meanwhile, we've got yet another story now, this again out of the Wall Street Journal, having to do with the COVID lab leak. In fact, I'm going to stop calling it a theory at this point because every day there's a new story with new data and new backup showing not only that it is most likely now that this virus was created in a lab based on this latest classified report from a top U.S. government laboratory. This, by the way, goes back to last May, where they issued the theory that the virus actually was created or at least modified and worked on in this lab in Wuhan. The evidence suggests not only that it was made there, but yes, in some way it leaked out of that lab. And I'm frankly starting to see that's the dominant understanding of where this virus came from. The evidence all points that way, Amber.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The natural theory has been getting less and less popular among some of the top scientists in the U.S. And this report, this classified report, was happening or was being conducted at the same time that Dr. Anthony Fauci was receiving emails from colleagues informing him that they believed the virus to be more likely engineered than naturally occurring. So this is a massive cover-up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the American people deserve answers on why this was overshadowed, covered up for so long, to the point where China has now been able to presumably destroy any evidence or most of the evidence that would conclusively determine where this virus originated. And it's one of the biggest scandals in the health industry, and it's going to have ramifications for trust in the medical industry for decades to come.
Absolutely, and you cannot talk about this scandal, and you're right to call it such a scandal and a cover-up without implicating most of the mainstream media because they were part and parcel to it. It's 750 O'Connor and Company.
Where Washington comes to talk.
I appreciate the discussion.
Washington's Mall.
Listen, there's plenty to talk about here.
105.9 FM, WMAL.
105.9 FM, WMAL.
It is 8:07 in the nation's capital. You're listening to WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. I'm Larry O'Connor. Amber Athey, Washington editor for The Spectator, joins us all morning long, keeping us company. Hey, Amber, good Tuesday to you.
Happy Tuesday.
Coming up, you and I, we're going to talk to Josh Kraushaar of National Journal and get the lowdown on today's primary for Democrats in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's all coming up. But first, I mean, who among us has not wanted to shoot our boss up into space at one point or another? Well, Christian Davenport, he actually has that opportunity in a way. He is a writer over at the Washington Post, and his book is The Space Barons, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and the Quest to Colonize the Cosmos. And, well, I mean, I guess you're not sending the owner of the Post, Jeff Bezos, up into space. He's doing it voluntarily, but, I mean, are you getting a little enjoyment out of that, Christian?
Well, I think he's going to have a lot of fun and paving the way for the rest of us who eventually someday want to go. And you know, it's just remarkable. This is something he's dreamed of since he was 5 years old and wanted to go. And it shows, too, I mean, this is the very first flight where they're sending human beings, and he's putting himself on the rocket. I mean, I know there's a lot of hype and a lot of romanticism about this, but let's face it, this is still a very dangerous thing, and he's putting himself right out there front and center.
What details do we have about this mission itself? Is this going to be a little bit like Alan Shepard? It's amazing in retrospect to look at Alan Shepard, the first American in space. It was 15 minutes, and he barely scratched the surface of the, getting out of our atmosphere, but it was huge. It was important. But in the long run, it wasn't a huge mission, really.
No, that's right. This is a suborbital space flight. That means it goes up and it comes straight back down. It doesn't go into orbit, like where the International Space Station is going at 17,500 miles an hour to stay in orbit around the Earth. This only goes like Mach 3 times the speed of sound. It barely scratches. I mean, we're talking about going about 60, 65 miles up and then coming straight down. This flight doesn't go quite as high as what Alan Shepard did. It's only in total about 10 minutes, and you get about 4 minutes where you're actually in space, where you can unbuckle and have weightlessness and kind of do your somersaults in the crew cabin there. But this is really a very short flight.
As you said, though, it's still risky. And I mentioned earlier, I personally have no interest in going to space. But Jeff Bezos is a very wealthy man, obviously. Is he insured in the case of disaster? I mean, what happens?
How do you insure that?
How do you insure? What happens if something goes wrong?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, it's very loose regulations right now for space tourism. The industry fought for this a long time ago. It's basically regulated the way like skydiving is or bungee jumping, where if you're a passenger, you basically sign the form that says that this is really risky. And that's it. It's what's called an informed consent standard. Now, the FAA is involved, but they're really out there to protect people and property on the ground so that if, the rocket explodes, there's not shrapnel raining down on populated areas. That's why, you have a lot of rocket launches that launch out over water. Yeah. Because there's nobody there. This in West Texas, Jeff out there owns, hundreds of thousands of acres, so he can ensure that it's an unpopulated area. But, there's some regulation. They got to clear the airspace, for example. They can't have commercial airlines flying over there. But in terms of the passengers, there's not a whole lot of regulations that govern it.
Christian Davenport's book is The Space Barons, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and the Quest to Colonize the Cosmos. And as you mentioned, Musk and Bezos, and then there's also Richard Branson of Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Airlines and all that. He's trying to do this himself. Talk to me about, and first of all, if I'm missing anyone, if there are other gajillionaires who are trying to privatize their own space flights, inform us, and sort of talk about this sort of new space race where it's not countries competing to get into space, but it's corporations.
That's right. I mean, during the Cold War space race, we had the United States versus the Soviet Union, racing to get to the moon. That's what drove the U.S. And Kennedy to get there first. Now, you've almost had these sort of, tech billionaires replace the nations. I mean, NASA still does a lot of good things, but I think a lot of these billionaires who grew up watching, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walk on the moon wanted to know, like, why hadn't, governments moved faster? Why haven't we been back to the moon yet? And so they decided to put their own resources into space. And, Jeff Bezos, for example, says it's the most important work he's doing. He spends about $1 billion a year investing that into Amazon. Elon Musk has been, pressing, really, really hard on SpaceX. They've restored U.S. spaceflight from U.S. soil for the first time since the space shuttle went away in 2011. So we almost had a decade. I mean, people don't realize this. There was like almost a whole decade when NASA was unable to fly human beings to space, and that we relied on Russia to do it. And now you've got this sort of new chapter where, we went from Gemini to Mercury and Gemini, Apollo and Space Shuttle to this new era of sort of like commercial space, where now they're ending this monopoly that government long held on human space travel. And they're saying, no, we can do this, and starting to, prove that. And SpaceX proved it last year when they flew humans for the first time, and now it's Blue Origin's turn coming up.
The government is awarding some contracts to help out these private companies. Last summer, Bezos actually expressed disappointment that his company didn't get a contract from the Air Force. That one went to SpaceX. How much is the government subsidizing this type of space exploration, and how do they decide which companies are getting these contracts?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for all this talk about, the commercial space movement, it is still not a sort of self-sustaining economy. The government is still the biggest customer. That's NASA and, to a large extent, the Pentagon that are awarding these major contracts that these companies need to be able to survive and to grow. There's that Pentagon launch contract, and also NASA last month awarded a contract for the lunar lander. This would be the spacecraft that lands astronauts on the moon under NASA's Artemis program. They want to restore a U.S. presence on the moon. That went to SpaceX, which was something of an upset because Blue Origin had thought they were going to win it. They had teamed up with aerospace giants Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman and Draper, and they had done very well in the sort of first round of the contracting. But then SpaceX came in and they bid pretty low, for this program, and were able to win that. And Blue Origin's not giving up without a fight.
Yeah,
they filed litigation to the GAO. They're protesting that, and they're fighting that on Congress. So there's a whole, bit of tension there around that contract.
Is there an exodus of people who had been working for NASA who now want to work for SpaceX or for Blue Origin? Like when you look at, I know that you because of your Washington Post affiliation, so hopefully I can gush about Musk for a moment, because SpaceX, those rockets just look so cool. They're beautiful stylistically, they're gorgeous, and when I first saw a SpaceX booster return back and land right on the pad there, if I worked at NASA, I'd be like, why are we doing that? I want to go work for this guy. Is that happening?
Oh, yeah, totally. And in terms of where SpaceX is, I mean, they are totally beating Blue Origin right now. I mean, Jeff Bezos is lagging way far behind Elon Musk in space. I mean, that is an absolute fact. And, yeah, I mean, I think if you're a young aerospace engineer and you're looking at your options, I think there is something of a brain drain from NASA, where you're like, I want to go work at for SpaceX because they're landing rockets and they're talking about going to Mars and they're flying Starship. So absolutely.
My 16-year-old son is really smart, and he loves the idea of space. And if it were 30 years ago, he'd say, I want to work at NASA someday. Now it's, I want to work with SpaceX. So real fast here, Christian, what is the end game here for Bezos? I know that Richard Branson, he's all about space tourism. He wants to sell people a great ride. Musk wants to colonize Mars. Has he stated you called it an investment. What is this? What's the return going to be? What is he really looking to achieve here?
Well, the end goal is, as he says, millions of people living and working in space. He wants to build the infrastructure that makes space more accessible, drive down the cost. The first step is that New Shepard rocket, named for Alan Shepard, who did that suborbital ride.
Mm-hmm.
The next rocket that they're working on is a much bigger rocket capable of going to orbit. It's called New Glenn, after John Glenn. That, too, would be reusable. They want to build habitats of their own in space.
Oh, yeah?
That's not just relying on the government. So it's basically building that infrastructure so that humanity can get off the planet, and it's not just governments, and a lot more people can do it a lot more reliably and efficiently.
We'll leave it there. Christian Davenport, his book is The Space Barons, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and the Quest to Colonize the Cosmos, and these science fiction books. Well, it's happening right now before our eyes. It's pretty cool. Thank you, Christian. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you. 8:16, so we better get straight to Lisa Baden in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center. Apparently, a pandemic can really put somebody in the mood. Quarantining, getting held up all day, can't leave, nothing good to stream anymore. I mean, just leave the Netflix. Let's just chill, I guess, is what happened during the pandemic, Amber Athey, because we're now getting some retrospective look back over the last year and a half, and most specifically about what people were doing with regard all that free time on their hand.
That's right. Well, there were a lot of predictions that there was going to be a major pandemic baby boom from all of the couples who were stuck inside together all day.
Totally get that. And if you're already a couple and already sort of in a monogamous relationship, sure, why not, right? But I was always wondering, what was it like for single people? Like, what was the dating scene like, especially in a city like Washington, where it was like even more locked down than other places? Like, I'm thinking if you were in Miami during this pandemic, just another ordinary April, right? But in Washington, not so easy to go out, find somebody, and start to, drum up a relationship or, hook up, if you will. The Washingtonian now has a cover story featuring over 30 different stories about, COVID sex stories, about hookups and parties and various sort of interactions, let's say. Now, you're a single. I don't want to get too personal here. I didn't mean to segue directly to you, Amber, but did you have challenges dating during this time?
Well, I was actually in a long-distance relationship that the relationship started before the pandemic, but became long-distance around the same time, actually, that D.C. locked down.
Oh.
So for me, I wasn't looking to date anyway, and I basically just had a lull period where I just hung out, waited for my boyfriend to get home. And
because every relationship was a long-distance relationship,
right? So
really,
and then the relationship didn't work out, but I didn't feel like I had wasted a year with this person because I couldn't have really seen anyone else anyway.
Some of these stories that Washingtonian features are disconcerting at best. Here's one: as a PA seeing COVID patients on a regular basis, I only wanted to hook up with other healthcare workers. Now, I mean, during the summer of 2020, I would want to meet up with somebody. I would screen them first to make sure this person is actually interesting, because working 55 hours a week, I only get a day or two off here or there. I've gotten so thirsty for some of these doctors at the hospital. It's so fun to look at some of the eye candy. So she was really, attracted to those who were on the front lines with it. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, especially if she works in the healthcare industry, I could see how she could find that attractive.
Joe, 36, says lunchtime sex made me a more productive worker. I guess it depends on what your job is.
Yeah, I guess so.
This is the
Hopefully
one that
he's washing his hands.
This is the one that really This is the one that really bothers me. A lawyer in Noma, 26 years old, Nicholas, a sex partner asked if she could call me Fauci. Now, Amber, I don't know about you, but if I'm in the middle of that, and if I'm in the middle of a situation romantically, and call me Dr. Brooks. Here, let me get this scarf and let me put this scarf on. Call me Deborah. I'm getting out of there. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
That is one of the biggest red flags. And did this guy he kept going, I guess.
Another girl asked if she could call me Fauci during set. She said it with a straight face. I pretended that I didn't hear her.
Oh, my gosh.
So this is like during the act.
Wow.
Can I call...
And
Can I call you Fauci?
And he just keeps going.
Yes. She never called me Fauci. I think the only way you can make that weirder is if she had brought a Fauci mask. I'll just leave you with that image. It's 8:22 on O'Connor and Company.
105.9 FM.
You make life feel a little bit normal. You really do.
WMAL.
I'm with you on that.
Where Washington comes to talk. Now, O'Connor and Company.
105.9 FM. WMAL.
It's 8:37 on WMAL. This is where Washington comes to talk. Larry O'Connor here, O'Connor and Company, alongside Amber Athey, the Washington editor for The Spectator. Amber, and you cover politics, of course, and everything else Washington for The Spectator, so it's a big day here in the Washington area.